Dearest Queers, happy Monday morning. Welcome. My name is Doolin. I'm a healer and mentor, and I work with queer and trans folks who are feeling feelings of loneliness and struggling with disconnection, and talk about strategies for connection and how to live your relational best life. I bring a trauma-informed lens and have a spiritual slant, so thanks for being with me here on the third episode of Dearest Queers this morning. This live series came out of a survey that I sent out in May, just asking folks for their experiences around loneliness and disconnection. Good morning, Kaja. If you're here on the live, say hi, and I'm excited to see you all on the replay as well. I have a question that when I read it in the survey that I sent out in May, it made me really want to hug the person who asked it, because it feels real and painful and vulnerable, but I think a question that I think many of us still ask and have asked in our lives. So the question today is, how do I trust that the people who say they care about me actually do? How do I trust that if they say they care, they actually do care about me? And so I haven't done it quite as explicitly in the first two episodes, making the connection between feelings of loneliness and the question that the person is asking. So I want to do that just like a little more explicitly at the beginning. Because if you think about it, if this person, or if if you resonate with this question a lot, if you're entering into your relationships or after, or have this overwhelming feeling of mistrust, or like there isn't this ease between there's no way that those relationships can be like nurturing and filling. There's just a lot of energy or anxiety spent around, can I really trust that this person feels the way that they say that they do about me? And so that can contribute to loneliness, because it's hard to connect when we're spending energy and anxiety like worrying about that. So to the asker, like I say every week, which is important, I love you and I see you, and thank you for asking this question. Like I said, I feel like it takes a lot of courage to put this one out there around feeling mistrust, or like, do people really care about me, So I want to break this question down into two pieces. The first piece is I want to like take on the trust portion, and then I want to take on the care portion. And so for the trust piece, my answer is that you learn to trust that other people mean what they say by first developing a relationship of trust with yourself. That like, you learn to trust that you mean what you say. And just like bear with me for a minute with this, because I don't know if you're having like some internal reaction, or like a little bit of a groan or an eye roll. I often talk about these like these like personal growth memes that I've seen around in this, and like how I strive for my work to be different than those. And like I used to have, like when I would see, those memes that were like, trusting other people begins with trusting yourself, and like I intuitively knew that, or I like cognitively got it, and I was all like snapped and like yes, yes to that. But like another part of me was like, can you stop like that? But that also like literally doesn't mean anything to me. So like, great, I keep hearing this, I keep reading this, but like I had no bodily sense of like what that actually meant. So could like someone like break that down for me, or like, could I have like a greater depth of understanding about what that actually meant? I think that that's why sometimes like just the words or like the answer feels really like, duh, just like do this thing, and it's like, well, if I could do the thing, I would have done the thing already, So, um, yeah. And I think that I like had, whatever, our like levels of, we don't, we like unfold to ourselves and we don't know until we know. But I think that I thought that I did trust myself, and it's a little like, when it came down to it, it was just like a big fat, like, just like buzzer noise on that was like not the case. So, um, you all, like all of us, like have been betraying ourselves for so long for different reasons. We don't even recognize it. Like some of us aren't even aware what that looks like. And self-betrayal or self-abandonment or self-rejection like erodes the very foundation of our trust with ourselves. And I like really want you to hear that like there is no judgment in this at all. Like this, like I've had to do so much work around this. Like most people I know that like are on some sort of like personal growth or like self-development path, like this is part of the work, is like reestablishing and like getting into right relationship with self, right? But like but we first have to acknowledge that like the self-betrayal or the abandonment or whatever is happening. And so last week I mentioned, like in the question about reaching this pivotal time in my life, like at the end of calendar year 2018, early 2019, where I just like really said, just like no more with these like patterns that I had been like playing out for most of my life. And so last week I said that I like entered myself into boundary school, which was like this like self-taught thing that I like went through. But it also meant like it also included developing and repairing a sense of trust with myself. In fact, I enrolled in an online course called Trust Yourself. So shout out to Betsy LaFay for that. It's a fantastic course. I've met a lot of awesome people through that, but the truth of what was happening in those relationships and some of the patterns that I was ending is that I wasn't listening to myself. That I so easily set aside myself and my feelings to, for like whatever reason, to like be loved, to, that is the pattern that I like have been playing out for the majority of my life. And so that was showing up in these relationships. And that is self-betrayal and self-abandonment. Like I wasn't listening to myself. Like when things would come up around like, ooh, that didn't quite feel right, or I don't really like the way that like I'm being treated, I just kind of like gloss that over in order for things to like maintain the status quo, And so through Trust Yourself program and like therapy and like my own work, like it was really about, it was a really like slow and deliberate process of learning about myself. Like fine detail, like really understanding like my moods and like watching how those fluctuated and like kind of like the log that I talked about last week, like based on these various interactions that I was having with people, like what was coming up on my body, like what energetically was happening for me. So like moods, what belonged to me and what belonged to other people, what did I really want, what did I desire, and like growing into a relationship of integrity with myself in that way. And that's how I began to like build trust with myself, to be like, to listen to myself, to know that this was how I was feeling and I'm going to honor this, even if it meant a hard conversation, even if it meant walking away from a relationship, a job, like whatever. But my commitment was to me. That was the thing that shifted at the end of 2018, early 2019, was that like it wasn't about other people anymore. It was about really, really showing up for myself. And when we trust ourselves, that's all that really matters in a relationship. Like our relationship with ourselves is the thing that matters most in our relationship with other people. So like when we are trustworthy, when we do the things we say we're gonna do, when we show up in relationship with ourselves with trust, then like those are the kind of folks who come into our lives. I'm not saying that this is like, a game of perfection and that like stuff doesn't ever come up in relationship, or like, that there might be some betrayal or some like shadiness that happens. But when we have a sense of trust developed with ourselves, like we have so much more access to choice. And that like we get to like move in a very like conscious and deliberate way from there then. So that if something comes up and like might give in a relationship, it might give us a moment to like pause and be like, is there anything that I need to do self-reflection wise around like something that maybe I brought to this, or like maybe this person like just isn't like a good fit, or I like now that I have a different level of like trust and care and respect for myself, I can just say like no thanks, like thank you, like I love you, like be on your merry way, and just like let them go and like let that release, and say like I choose something different, like I choose relationships that are built on authenticity and trust. So that was the first piece about trust. And so developing a relationship, how do I trust that someone says that they care about me? So we're working on really developing trust with ourselves. And then the care portion, so how do I trust that someone cares? And again, my question back to the asker would be, how much do you trust that you care about you? And I know that like it might sound silly, right? Like of course I care about myself, but like, do you? Like in this, like let's like unpack or like sink into that for just a second. So like, so how do you, if I asked you how you feel cared for by other people, like what would you say? Is it that like you feel seen by them or validated, you feel well held, they're consistent, they're reliable, they like ask you how your day was, they bring you gifts, they like chose you to be in their quarantine pod with them, like what is it about, like, how do you feel cared for by other people? And then the follow-up question would be, how many of those things are you giving to yourself? Like, do you see yourself? Like, really see yourself? Like, do you validate yourself for, like, everything, like, on every level that comes up? It goes back to the first week when we talked about, how do I become more comfortable being alone? Well, like, are you comfortable with all of the things that come up? Do you validate them? Do you hold yourself well in that? Do you consistently show up for yourself? At the end of a, like, really shitty day, do you say, like, baby, how was your day? And, like, really take that in and, like, and really, like, care and attend to yourself. And if you aren't doing a lot of those things, it's okay. This is like, it's a process, it's a path. It's like developing a relationship with self, just as we do with, like, all other folks. But oftentimes we're focusing on our relationships with other people, like, long before we're doing that work with ourselves. So if you aren't doing many of those things, like, if the ways you want other people to care for you, you aren't doing for yourself, then I would say that really the, like, crux of this question that is being asked is that some part of you is asking, like, how can I really trust that I care about me and will care for me? Because if we aren't doing that, how can we build trust that we will show up for ourselves? Like, that's the like crux of that question there. And when we develop a practice of building trust and care for ourselves, like a really deep practice of that, how other people feel about us, like, matters, like, much, much less. Because we're not focusing on the outside about, like, what we're going to get from other people. Are they going to show up for us? Like, we become our own source of trustworthiness and care rather than outsourcing that to other people. I'm not saying that, like, of course we want people who are trustworthy and, like, authentic and caring in our lives. Like, absolutely. Like, we deserve to have that, and, like, we matter that much to have that in our lives. But, like, really becoming the anchor for those things for ourselves first, or, like, like, in the process of, it's not like you have to end all relationships and do that work first, but, like, really devoting the practice to that. And then, it, like, sort of creates this filter when, like, someone slips through that who, like, isn't trustworthy or authentic, or, like, isn't quite what you're, like, looking for or creating. You can say, like, nah, I'm good. Like, nope. And just, like, that's it. And, like, move on. And, like, because that really solid core and sense of, like, self-trust and, like, self-care is there. And then we can say we have choice, and that's the empowering portion of that. So because I trust myself and I care about myself, I'm going to take care of myself in that way. So yeah, and this is, like, not glamorous work. That's why, like, this is, like, not work that, like, is meme sized. Like, it's not a quick fix. Like, it takes, like, a real devotion to self and a commitment to say, if I want to feel trust in my relationships with other people, then I must, feel trust with myself first. Because it can't exist outside of you without it being present first internally. So that's what I have for this week. Thank you to the asker again for this question, and thank you all for being here either live or on the replay. I will be back next Monday, I believe July 13th at 10 a.m. Central Time with another question and an answer. In the meantime, if you have a question about connection or a follow-up question that came up in watching this episode, please reach out to me. I love to, just connect with you all and be in interaction. So please do that. You can follow me on Instagram at Doolin. I'll be, like, following up with these posts with some more, like, tips and strategies for connection throughout the week. If you feel so moved to share this with someone who you feel would, like, resonate with it, I would, like, love that. So I love you all very much. You're doing great work. Thanks for being here, and I will see you soon.